I'm trying really hard to get these videos out on time and to have a consistent schedule, but life is just kind of busy.
I got a lot going on in my dimension.
Finally getting around to doing a new video. Today I want to talk about sequels. Of the top 10 box office grosses for 2024, the movies that made the most money, 8 of them were sequels. Last year we got a lot of sequels. Some were good, some were less good, and then there were some that I just thought were plain dumb and stupid. Sequels are not inherently bad. Some of them can actually be really good. There are sequels that I like more than its predecessor. Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Top Gun: Maverick, Way of Water, Kung Fu Panda 2, to name a few. However, in my movie watching experience, sequels are often more bad than they are good. Some people may disagree with some movies on this list, but How to Train Your Dragon 2, Kung Fu Panda 3, Doctor Strange 2, the Star Wars sequels, Jaws 2, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Matrix sequels, The Incredibles 2, and many others, I think those were all terrible sequels. What makes a sequel so easy to get wrong is the fact that it needs to be a continuation of its predecessor. It is already confined by what the original movie has set, and it has to build upon it as well as match or exceed its level of quality. Having this original movie to build upon and be compared to sets the sequel on a pretty narrow path, one that can be easy to stray from. And when a sequel is bad, it can be very, very bad. So, what exactly ruins a sequel? What makes a sequel bad? First, there is one very important question that all storytellers should ask before they decide to make a sequel. Is there more story to tell? There are some sequels that just do not make any sense to make. The original movie ended so well and closed out everything with a nice little bow. There wasn't anything else that they could do or anywhere else that they could go with the story. It ended and ended well, but then the studio decided they wanted to capitalize on its success anyway. Thus, they want to create a sequel, forcing a movie to be made where there wasn't much story to tell. So, in order to create a story, they have to undo the ending of the first one. Take the nice happy ending and ruin it just so the sequel can be made. A prime example would be the Terminator sequels. Not Judgment Day, that one was the only good sequel. That one successfully built upon the first and did not ruin or rewrite any of the established information from the first. Unlike the first one, the second one ended on a happier, more hopeful note. The story ended well, Skynet was destroyed, Sarah Connor felt hopeful and safe and could finally live a normal life with her son. It was a great ending, and there didn't seem to be much more that could be told after this. But they decided that they wanted to try anyway, and we received 4 other Terminator sequels, none of which could match the quality of storytelling as the first 2. Each of the sequels were incredibly unnecessary and just kind of ruined the nice ending that we had received in the second. It got even worse in the most recent Terminator movie, Dark Fate. While the other sequels undid the destruction of Skynet, a great accomplishment from the second movie, Dark Fate took it a step further. They undid the greater accomplishment, which was keeping John safe. Sarah and John's happy ending was completely undone. Skynet was brought back, and then John was later killed right after the second movie, where he was protected and saved. Blatantly undoing and ruining the characters' accomplishments and happy endings is just cruel to the story and the audience. While the creator of the sequel uses this to set up a new story, it does not set up a good story, one that the audience will enjoy. There are movies that I absolutely love and would hate if they got a sequel because it would just ruin and diminish the ending of the first movie. At the top of this list is Edge of Tomorrow. That movie has an amazing story and the ending is very absolute. The aliens are defeated, Cage's character arc is complete, he and Rita are both alive, and humanity is saved. If they wanted to do a sequel, what would they possibly do that wouldn't ruin that ending? Would they have to bring back the aliens? Would they show that they weren't all defeated and the war continues? Would they undo the heroic accomplishments of the first? I can't think of anything they could do to continue the story of these characters that wouldn't just ruin the first. So I'm very happy that they have left it alone. It's the same situation for the Tomorrow War. Very similar to Edge of Tomorrow with aliens, time travel, heroic acts, the aliens are defeated, humanity is saved. An absolute ending. Unlike Edge of Tomorrow, this one has a sequel announced, with our main character from the first returning. Try as I might, I cannot fathom what they're going to do with this sequel that will not just ruin the first one. The title of the movie is The Tomorrow War, and it is a war against aliens with time travel. The aliens were defeated, the time machine was destroyed, so what are they going to do to make the Tomorrow War 2 make sense? Are they going to bring back the aliens somehow and thus need another time machine? Are they just going to undo the accomplishments and the victory of the first one just to create a second? I don't know what they're gonna do. And I think they should just leave this movie alone. If there is no story to tell, don't force one to be told. If the characters' lives will be ruined and accomplishments undone, don't do it. And I know that this will always be a problem because studios just want to make money. That's their main motivation. So, of course, cheap sequels are always going to be made to just make more money. But in a perfect world, they would consider the story above the money. There are other movies that don't have a very specific premise, like Edge of Tomorrow or The Tomorrow War. Those movies were based on a very specific premise, time, and event. But there are other movies that aren't so tied down that do allow for a sequel to be made. Movies that have good endings but also leave things open for more stories to be told. One prime example is Dungeons & Dragons. While this did have a happy ending, it did not close the story completely. The world that this movie is based on allows for the character stories to continue in interesting ways that can be turned into fun movies for the audience. They can go on more adventures, face more adversaries, discover more treasure, explore more interesting landscapes and magical places. The open-endedness of this world allows for more stories to be told. And while there currently are no sequels announced for Dungeons & Dragons, I can absolutely see them doing a second and having it just be as fun as the first, while still building upon it and furthering the character story and growth. If there is more story to tell, that's a good start. However, there is more required for a sequel to be good. Or rather, there are lots of things that a storyteller should not do in order to avoid making a bad sequel. Now we're going to talk more specifically about what not to do if you are going to go ahead and make a sequel. Number 1, do not undermine the character arc of our protagonist from the first movie. A thing that can really undermine the arc of the character from the first movie is to simply repeat that arc in the sequel. First movie that I can think of that does this is the second Guardians of the Galaxy. In the first, we are introduced to these characters that are used to working alone and then are forced to work together. A huge part of each character's arc in this movie is learning to work with one another and become a team. They struggle with it at first and are very rude and antagonistic towards each other, but in the end, they learn to become a really good team and become good friends as well. The second should have built upon this and should have explored their friendships more. And while we do see this in the third one, the second one actually seems to just revert back to their acquaintance status where they just constantly bicker and fight. The characters just seemed to go through the same beats that they already did in the first. And the characters seem to just end up in the exact same place that they ended up in the first. Were the experiences and arcs that we saw in the first one just not super impactful on these characters? Did they not really learn anything from that first movie? Is that really why we're repeating all of this again? Don't repeat, build upon. The third did a pretty good job building upon the characters' arcs and relationships and exploring where they went after the second, rather than just repeating the same beats for a third time. Another thing that shouldn't be done is contradicting the character's arc from the first one. Doing this also undermines that arc. In the first How to Train Your Dragon, Hiccup wants to be a Viking. He wants to do what they do, he wants to help them, and he wants to be accepted by them. In the first, he finds that he cannot be like them, but instead of running away from them, like stupid Valka, he stays with them and helps them to change their minds and change their way of life for the better. And in the end, he is accepted by them. In the second, Hiccup seems to not want to be part of his people at all. While in the first, he's constantly sneaking away because he's afraid of what they would do to Toothless. In the second, he's constantly removing himself from the village to be alone and explore by himself. And he doesn't even want to be the chief. And while others may have watched that and just thought that Hiccup just didn't want to be chief because he didn't feel like he was ready or capable, and yeah, sure, that was true of the character, he also seemed to just not want to be part of his tribe at all. He didn't seem to want to spend time with his family or friends and preferred just exploring alone with Toothless instead. I really thought that we would see more of him interacting with his dad in this sequel, but we actually didn't get very much of that at all. And that was a big bummer. In the first, Hiccup wanted nothing more than to make his dad proud and to have his dad accept him. And in the second, he seems to not really care about that actually, which I was sad about. They took his character in a direction that didn't seem to make sense to me. It really contradicted what we saw of him in the first. Instead of diverting from that character and his desires, they should have built upon it and explored it further. They should have shown more of his relationship with his dad now that it had been strengthened at the end of the first movie. They should have shown how he interacted with the people of the village and how he wanted to do more to help them, just like he wanted in the first. Instead, he feels like a loner, not wanting to be part of the tribe and not wanting to be their leader. In short, sequels should never revert or contradict the characters' arcs from the first. Another thing to not do in order to make your sequel good is to not remove, ignore, or undo any relationships from the first one. In the second Doctor Strange movie, we see the characters Christine and Wong both return. However, their relationships with our protagonists are drastically changed from where we saw them leave off. The most aggravating relationship that we saw be undone was that of Christine and Stevens.
But you still didn't get the girl.
Throughout the first, we see that these two did not get along super well, and Steven did not treat Christine very kindly. They had a falling out, but then Steven worked on becoming a better, more selfless person and came to see how rude he had been to her. He apologized, and it seemed that their relationship was on an upward trend by the end of the movie. But apparently none of that mattered because we see at the very beginning of the second movie that she's getting married to someone else and their relationship is completely over. Hope you didn't care about seeing where that relationship went because apparently you're not gonna. It's going nowhere. Then throughout the movie, they go through all these alternate dimensions and just show that their relationship never worked out. The audience didn't want that. The characters didn't want that. Nobody wanted that. And yet they did it anyway. I have no idea why they made this decision. Everything that these characters went through, everything that was built up in that first movie was completely undermined and thrown away within 10 minutes of the sequel. The friendship between Strange and Wong was also ruined. While these two learned to work together and seemed to be good friends by the end of the second movie, it appears that none of that mattered either. Wong and Strange are so annoying in the sequel. They aren't good friends, they are incredibly rude to each other, and they do not work well together. I don't know why, but the sequel just decided that it was going to ruin any and all relationships that the audience ever cared about from the first. Creators of sequels need to realize that the audience is invested in these relationships that are created from the first movie. When they decide to just ruin these relationships and throw them at the window, it makes the audience feel that they cannot become invested in any of these characters' relationships. If anything can be destroyed at any moment, why bother caring? Why bother becoming so invested in these characters' lives and their friendships if they will just later be deemed unimportant? Along with not ruining these relationships, the relationships should also not be completely sidelined or ignored. There are some sequels that do maintain the relationships of these characters that we saw from the first, but they aren't focused on, and they're sidelined to focus on a different new relationship that we don't really care about. As sequels are meant to be a continuation of a story, they should build upon the characters and relationships that we already know and love from those stories. The third thing to not do. I said before that a character's arc should not be repeated in a sequel, and the same goes for basic plot structures. Do not repeat the plot from the first movie. The second A Quiet Place movie repeated much of the plot from the first movie. The endings in both of them are essentially the same. In the first one, it ends with them using the alien's weakness by having Reagan send a high-pitched noise through a microphone. Then the mom shoots the alien with a shotgun. Then, in the second, it ends in the exact same way. However, it's different this time because this is not a new revelation. They already knew that this was their weakness. Hello? That's how the first one ended. You just created an entire new movie just to come to the same conclusion that you had already come to in the first one. What? If the sequel is just going to end up in the same place where the first one landed, why is it necessary? It's not. Another thing that can really ruin a sequel is disrespecting the character or legacy of the original protagonist. One thing that I love that some sequels do is pass the baton to the next generation. The best two examples that I can think of are Top Gun Maverick and Way of Water. In each of these sequel movies, the protagonist from the first is still our main character, but the story also introduces the next generation. As stories are continued in these worlds, it should be acknowledged that time is passing, these characters are getting older, and eventually the story's focus will move on to the new generation. What should not be done is showing that the main character is now useless and the next generation is simply better than them. The story should instead show how much our protagonist can teach this new generation. Like in Top Gun Maverick. When the new generation is introduced, sequels should never,
ever, for any reason whatsoever,
disrespect the legacy of the original character. And some of you may know what the prime example of this is. I'm talking about Luke Skywalker. What Rian Johnson and also J.J. Abrams did to this character is absolutely atrocious and unforgivable. Luke was an amazing Jedi and character, and they absolutely destroyed his good name. And for what? It was disrespectful to the original creators and disrespectful to all the Star Wars fans. Sequels are targeted towards the fans of the original. They are there because they love the story, they love the characters, and they want more of that. And creators of sequels should understand that and take the care and effort needed to respect those characters and their legacies. A good example of how to do this well would be Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. The movie was set to be hundreds of years after the original trilogy, but they acknowledged the original characters and their legacy. And they showed that they understood the first one and respected the stories from it. They even went out of their way to add in a funeral scene for Caesar, which I thought was a beautiful love note to all the fans of the original trilogy. And it clearly showed that they respected what the fans loved from the first three movies and were going to handle this sequel very well. And they did. Caesar's character was not ruined in any way, which would have made the audience pretty upset, especially me. While in the case of the Star Wars sequels, Luke's character was ruined beyond repair and his legacy as well. Instead of him building up a new generation of Jedi or restoring the Jedi Order, he was a complete failure. In Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Caesar's legacy and beliefs actually were twisted by characters in the story, but those characters were the bad guys. The main characters, Raka mostly, knew the truth of what Caesar believed and reminded the audience of his good character. And in the end, Caesar's good name and legacy lived on. Sequels should not ruin the legacy of original characters or upset the fans by ruining the characters that they loved. Audiences return to sequels because they loved what story was told from the first. They love the characters, the world, the themes, the messages, and they want to return to the sequel to see more of that. They do not want to see those characters torn down, disrespected, and turned into failures. Quick recap, here is what I suggest any storyteller should address before deciding to create a sequel. Is there more story to tell here? If the answer is yes, the storyteller should follow these rules. Do not undermine the character's original arc. This can be done by repeating the arc or contradicting the arc. Do not remove, undo, or ignore relationships from the first movie. Do not repeat the plot from the first movie. And do not disrespect the legacy of the original characters. In conclusion, sequels can be a great continuation of characters, their stories, their relationships, and the world that they live in. However, they need to be loyal to what came before. That's it for this video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything that I've said. And let me know of any of your favorite or least favorite sequel movies out there. Also, if you were bothered at all by the constant changing of camera angle, lighting, background, I am too. Don't worry, I'm figuring it out. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.